how do we know something exists? Do we take it on faith value alone? Or is there evidence to believe?
The world of Terminus is one where our knowledge of many things will come from environmental design. And so it's fitting that in February 2022, Visionary Realms, developers of the upcoming MMORPG Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, revealed some lore about one of the tribes of giants in Terminus, the Galdassi, through an exploration of their former home. So, in this video, I'll delve into that lore a little deeper and see how it connects to the rest of the lore about giants. So, let's get to know the giants of Pantheon. Before we get to the Galdassi, let's get a better understanding of the giants in general. The primary source of our knowledge comes from this newsletter, which gave us a primer on giants. The overarching theme when it comes to giants in Pantheon is their mystery, a race known as much for choosing a shroud of seclusion as it is for its thundering steps. The lore notes, whether cordial, of which there are precious few, or grotesquely brutal, of which there are far too many, the race demonstrates little interest in sharing their past with the world that has grown up around them. Either from reverence or ignorance, the secrets of the world of giants are mostly kept locked away from inquisitive eyes. Mostly. A fiercely inward focus, with no desire to have their tale told, is how they may best be characterized. Giants have existed on Terminus long before the Nine Races arrived. In fact, they were contemporaries of the Rainborn Dragons, and witnessed their retreat from the world when the celestial boundary was imposed. The lore notes, all of dragonkind similarly deferred their territories, roosts, and dwellings, down even to the common spawn. This is verified by credible native peoples such as the Tholan of Ithilus and the Elvanan giants of what is now Kingsreach. Although they are an inward-focused race, it would be a mistake to say they are not involved in the affairs of the world. During the Deicide War, one tribe came to the assistance of the humans in their fight with their former deity. It's noted there was little choice but to meet Osari's vast forces on the field of battle. Assistance in this came from the Moskag warriors and the Elvanan giants. This leads to the question of who are the Elvanan. The lore to date has identified several tribes of giants in Terminus. This includes the Elvanan of Kingsreach and the Hisari of Rainfall. Another tribe, the Wovaran, are specifically detailed in the lore. It tells us, on the continent of Kingsreach, where the largely peaceful Elvanan giants speak of a fraternal conflict brought on by their Wovaran counterparts. The Elvanan have retained a measure of their ancient presence high up in the Roan Mountains, while the Wovaran have all but died out or abandoned the continent entirely. Furthermore, the lore speaks to other unnamed tribes, such as the various seaside Gaigana, who wade into the ocean depths in search of beasts to feed their monstrous appetite. And, in the recent February newsletter, we can now add the Galdassi of Wild's End to this list. So there's at least 4 tribes of giants in Terminus, but maybe even more. So just how common are giants in Pantheon? In the past, the lore reveals, at one time, many more giants roamed this world, and their presence was nearly without equal. In modern times, we know giants are few and far between on the planet. A rare sighting as, in many cases, there are less than 10 to 15 Gaigana on a single continent, with a regional expectation of 3 to 5 in total. Jared Pullen, lead artist for Pantheon, explained why this is from a gameplay perspective when he said this.
And see, this is the thing. A giant is such a memorable, or the goal is for it to be such a memorable encounter that players will cherish for a long time. And so we don't just want to have giants running around willy-nilly in the environment. We want them to be really special, really special and memorable. So to that end, what we want to do is foreshadow them. Have a type before we meet the anti-type.
Few in number perhaps, but great in acclimation. The lore informs giants have a natural resistance to harsh climates. As they age, their skin thickens into something more akin to a hide, dulling surface sensitivities, but protecting their inner body from extreme temperatures. We know Pantheon's acclimation system and environmental fractures will play heavily in gameplay. so attempting to engage a rare spawn giant may require some player protection. And where do giants dwell? The elves of Faerthale need pay particular attention to this, perhaps as the Elvanen preferred the hostile chain of Rhone mountains, as the ferocious climate was of little inconvenience to them. In a recent developer update, Chris Joppa Perkins, the game's creative director, confirmed there are no giants in Faerthale, and that's reserved for the Colossi, but he did confirm they are in the Rhone mountains. Note that the Colossi are a different creature entirely, and one we know almost nothing about. As mentioned, humans and giants share a history in arms during the Deicide War with the Elvanen giants, yet they fare no better than other races, trying to learn the secrets of the race. The lore confirms even the Elvanen, still considered a worthy ally of humans and elves, refuse to divulge any significant details on the War of the Outsiders. What is the War of the Outsiders, you may be asking? The lore speaks to the history of the race and a devastating war between the Gaigana and another great power, a conflict that wrought disaster and death on a scale that dwarfed the Revenant and the Deicide War. This conflict, which they called the War of the Outsiders, was waged against an enemy unknown to modern historians. To say this event dwarfed the effects of the Deicide War is quite the statement, given that the Deicide War was, as its name denotes, literally a war of the gods. In February, we saw one of the implements of war used by the Elvanen giants, a trebuchet, which one might find in the world. Accordingly, it's not surprising that ruins and wreckage of giant society should be a source of knowledge in the current era. Hence, in the February newsletter, the focus was more on the Galdassi ruins than on the tribe themselves. The lore cites, while the dusk of their dominion fell millennia past, the reasons for their demise are astonishingly difficult to uncover. Despite leaving vast monuments of their former power, and on many counts still living in them, giants remain a hulking mystery to the modern world. The Galdassi ruins showcased this aspect. We got an exploration of one of these vast monuments, in which we learned several new things about the giants. Firstly, it contains the remnants of dwellings, pavilions, and bridges, pointing to a civilization that had a dominant grip on the land. The script of the Galdassi is a mixture of picture and rune, a hieroglyphic hybrid known as Gleindul. Learning the language of the race would be key to any keeper worth their salt in Pantheon, as what ushered in their downfall or hastened their abandonment of these lands remains sealed within these strange inscriptions. To create these inscriptions, we can see in this concept art that they utilize tablets and writing implements, as much as they utilize trees as braziers to light their abodes. But it's not only the script, but the material itself which also tells their story. The lore suggests that the stone of the ruins is of unknown origin, as it neither weathers nor chips when struck, breaking many a pick laid upon it. We know of some of the materials of Terminus from another recent developer stream, but whatever the Galdassi ruins are built with is likely a mystery for the future. Returning to the War of the Outsiders, recall the scope of destruction for a moment. We learned that the Galdassi did not escape such, with one caveat. It's noted, markings throughout the whole of Wild's End suggest that there was once even a more sprawling series of buildings, but nothing of these structures persists. For whatever reason, the deconstruction was left incomplete. So the ruins we see are but a small part of their habitat. Unfortunately, the Galdassi themselves appear not to have been as lucky, as evidence suggests that their domain may have stretched out onto the sea, though none survived to confirm or deny these clues. So it doesn't appear the Galdassi reside in these ruins at the present, but that's not to say that other tribes don't in their own. We've learned that giants are reclusive in nature, but what of their relationship between the tribes? The lore tells us, perhaps surprisingly, these relationships were noteworthy. In fact, there's one documented instance of communication which may give us a clue as to why the Galdassi are no longer in the area. The lore reveals there was an Elvanen request that was given to the halflings shortly after their settlement in Wild's End. The request was spoken and given in writing by an emissary of the Rhone giant tribe, and it requested the smaller race neglect the Galdassi throne, deny the Galdassi heir. It appears the Elvanen tribe sought the aid of the halflings of Wild's End, but to what end? The lore continues, thus academia has wondered if the two giant nations were in fact rivals of some kind. Did they share the land together for a time before war? Or perhaps held a common enemy? Do the now peaceful but ever secretive Alvanen have a more warlike past? Did they evict their ancient brethren in an era past? Or are they perhaps the children of more mighty Galdassi fathers? Given what we learned earlier about the Alvanen conflict with the Wovaran, it would seem to point to the Alvanen as a cunning, perhaps even treacherous tribe. But the evidence remains incomplete, much like the picture of giant culture in general. Giants in MMOs hold a special place in all our hearts, so it's important that Pantheon giants evoke a similarly strong impression. The lore to date echoes both great power and great mystery. And should you choose to hunt these creatures, don't say the lore didn't warn you, as giant hunting is a profitable business for a brave, insane, bloodthirsty, and callous few. Just remember, giants have a way of not always having the loot you're looking for. Thank you for taking the time to check out this video, and to learn more about Pantheon's lore, you can check out my playlist here, or come hang out with us on our weekly podcast, The Rewind, where I read some official lore every single week. Until next time, cheers, and thanks for watching.